Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we have, and staff, I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Committee of the Whole to order. It has been moved by Councillor Durley that the agenda for the October 5th, 2015 regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is, any conflicts of interest. Do any members have any conflicts of interest they need to disclose at this time? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 5.2.1, if we should get into detailed discussion of the pro forma, and there are specific issues dealing with the fitness center component, I will leave the room as I have a conflict there. As I've declared in the past, my wife owns a building in which a tenant operates a fitness center.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. So noted. Are there any other conflicts of interest? Can that be so noted by the clerk? Thank you. Now we'll move to department reports. The first is community planning and development. And I see staff are putting together a display here. And there are a number of members of the public here for this. So it's been moved by Councillor Durley that Committee of the Whole receives the issue summary report for information as it pertains to application file numbers AM 0713, OPAM 1315, and SP 0315 regarding 1022 Pelham Street. And that committee direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw to amend the land located on the south side of Welland Road, east of Pelham Street, municipally referred to as 1022 Pelham Street, from neighborhood commercial NC-108 and agriculture A to a site-specific neighborhood commercial NC-108, referring to Appendix 6 in the report, and residential multiple 1 RM1 with a holding provision zone. And that committee direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw and official plan amendment to amend the lands located on the south side of Welland Road, east side of Pelham Street, municipally known as 1022 Pelham Street, from urban highway commercial to urban living area / built boundary as depicted in Appendix 4. And further, that committee direct planning staff to prepare the site plan agreement and bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan agreement between the town of Pelham and 4 High Street, Inc. Before we start, I think the clerk has something to inform us about the report. Madam Clerk, there was a bit of an issue.
Mr. Mayor, a portion of the report was not uploaded to the published website agenda, but copies have been made available for the public this evening. And if anyone wants an additional copy, just contact the clerk's office and we'll ensure that that is forwarded.
And they were uploaded this morning, is that correct?
They were uploaded today as well, with apologies.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Discussion, questions from members of committee? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It mentions in here that NC 108 permits auto service and sales, but fueling services is not mentioned. So we're looking to try and change it from NC 108 to something that allows a service station, or if it's not permitted under that, how could it be permitted under something else? I just get that question through you to perhaps planning staff.
Ms. Weens?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, that's correct. The current zoning does not permit the sale of gas, so we need to have a zoning bylaw amendment to permit it. The official plan, in terms of the urban highway commercial designation, does allow for automobiles and gas station sales and service. We're just dealing with the automobile gas sales through the zoning bylaw amendment, and so that's one of the reasons why we are here.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Junkin and then Pap. Councillor Junkin.
Just like to, I guess, first of all, comment on government regulations. Let's say that you can't store snow on highly vulnerable aquifer, anything that's classified as HVA. You can't store snow on this site, and yet I find it quite ironic that we can dig a 30-foot hole and put in a 40,000 liter gas tank. It just blows me away that somewhere in this province, if not in the municipal act, in the province of Ontario, with the environmental groups the way they are, I just find it hard to believe that someone can come in and put on top of a known aquifer this kind of an operation. It's one thing to build houses that you go down 15 feet. They're not going to pollute the area, but there is nothing made by man that is permanent. And I just, myself, I just think that this is totally not suitable for this site. I'd just like to go on record as saying that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Papp.
Well, one of the questions was proposed by Councillor Drilly, but also picking up with Councillor Junkin is saying, there's a lot of work that's gone in back and forth with the neighbors and the developers about this whole site. There's two things that still trouble me to no end. One is the provision of the sale of gasoline. I know the safety standards, relatives of mine were in the business, they're high, and I just don't understand from a commercial business plan what that's going to accomplish when there's all these other gas stations around the area. Secondly, we just went through an economic development planning area, and I say this without prejudice, that we're trying to rebuild our downtown core, make sure that the businesses complement each other, yet we're putting in more retail space down at a corner where I'm at a loss as to how this is going to be filled, particularly in light of what we're struggling with as it is with downtown. So I am very, very, how can I say, skeptical. I just don't understand. I realize the developers tried with some residential developments, but overall, I guess going back to all the public meetings we had, I had asked that there's some sort of balance be put into place, and I'm still not convinced that this is the best possible place for, let alone the gasoline, but a commercial retail, and for it to be viable and sustainable. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Other members of council with questions or comments? Councillor Ribbiak.
Mayor, I don't have perhaps as much concern as my colleagues do with respect to the legal or technical aspects of what's being proposed. I believe that indeed the technology around selling gas is developed to such a point that, and I know that the materials used in the creation of gas stations has changed a great deal over the years, and there's probably far more money invested in ensuring that there aren't any major issues that occur with gas stations. So I'm fairly confident that the standards to which a gas station would be put in that location would be fairly good from the perspective of, is it going to poison the aquifer? I mean, there's an aquifer under the entire town, and there's lots of opportunity to damage it, and this one would probably be least of them because it would probably be newest and best in terms of the technology that we put into it. Nor am I concerned particularly with whether the project would be a commercial success or not. I was fairly impressed with the developer in terms of their ability to do a market study and to understand where something like this would be successful. It's not our responsibility to ensure the success of a commercial venture, but think about whether it's wise to put there. But in terms of is it going to be successful or not successful, I'm not sure that I'm particularly concerned with that question. I suspect that it would be successful because the studies that the developer would have put himself through would probably have answered that question for him, or he wouldn't be prepared to make the investment that he's going to be making there. What concerns me is that although it may be technically and legally right, it still nevertheless needs to fit within the town. So its appearance is extremely important. The way it functions is extremely important. And most important, I guess, is how it impacts the people who live live next to it. So what I found troubling with respect to the report was that, well, a couple of things, but let me start with the one that hits me greatest, and that is that probably the single most impactful element of the design is the border between existing houses and the proposal that is meant to be made up of residential. The least amount of detail within the proposal has to do with what's going to happen between the existing residential properties and the proposed development. It seems to me that aside from the concerns that people express with regard to the technical aspects of it, the safety aspects of it, certainly one of the things that bothered them was we're going to have this mall in front of us and it's going to impact our way of life, it's going to impact what we're looking at, it's going to impact on property values, things of that nature. So it seems to me that one of the most important elements of that is that residential buffer. There's some indication that this may be something that the developer will look at later on when he has a residential development partner, or he may sell the property. But all of that strikes me as being without enough detail for me to feel comfortable that the way this thing would develop in a way that in fact answers the needs of the community. So that's one thing that bothers me. Another thing that bothers me about the proposal is how it will function with regard to the sidewalks around it. We put a lot of stock into design of commercial areas in which the buildings are on the sidewalks and access to the buildings are from the sidewalk. This was certainly a feature of an early brochure that was put out there, and it made things look interesting, but the elevations that were presented with this report seem to indicate a change from that. That is, the sidewalk part, or the part of the buildings that are facing the sidewalks look like the backs of the buildings rather than the fronts of the building, and don't necessarily have access. I have difficulty seeing the placards that are there because of the glare of the lights and that sort of thing, and I don't know whether they've returned, because they can't see it from here, and we haven't had a chance to see it prior to this, what exactly that design is like. But it seems to me that one of the things that was of concern to me in looking at the report and the drawings that accompanied the report was that there seemed to be some ambivalence, some lack of clarity as to exactly how that was going to be designed. So that's another thing that bothered me. And the third thing that bothered me was with regard to the pumps and the canopy covering the pumps. One of the things that I'd said in an earlier meeting with regard to this was that the kinds of issues that accompany gas stations as we've come to know them, I think are pretty well known. The light pollution, the noise, the traffic, all that sort of stuff. And that there might have been, in the years since, I guess, the first gas pumps were put on the sides of roads, some effort that may have gone into the design of gas stations, something that bring them into the 21st century, something to deal with those issues so that, you know, these islands with the pumps and the canopy, which is kind of standard, and I think which appears in the drawings, we haven't deviated from that at all. The proponent developer hasn't looked at anything, hasn't done anything imaginative that might have dealt with the kinds of issues that are there. These issues exist everywhere. It's inconceivable to me that in an area that is as profitable as the sale of gasoline, money hasn't been spent on trying to figure out a better way of doing things. And certainly this does not represent a better way of doing things. So that bothers me as well. So I guess if I'm not hearing anything that kind of deals with those issues, I'm really not convinced at this point that this is something that I would support going ahead with. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you looking for comment from staff on some of those items, or are you just making comment yourself?
Well,
I'm sorry,
those are the things that bother me. If there are responses that are available as to what the residential component of this thing is going to look like, and to what extent thought has been given to the degree to which that part of the development would be effective in dealing with the concerns that residents have raised, I'd like to hear something more definitive about the design of the buildings that are being proposed. As I said, the elevations that are presented here, if they aren't meant to be the ones we're to make our minds on, then show us what is. And finally, of course, this whole question of how to deliver gas to automobiles. Is there technology designed out there that might be brought into this to make this? I guess the development, if it incorporated that design, would put it ahead of a whole lot of things in the area. And I think that if a gas station was going to be acceptable there, then on one basis upon which it might be acceptable is that it is far and away better than the way gas is delivered to the market here than it is anywhere else. And it may then be a feature of a very progressive and very attractive community rather than just a gas station. Anyway, if there are comments, if
Well,
people
I'm
can make those
gonna
comments,
see if
I'd love
Ms.
to hear them.
Weens or Ms. Hannah, Ms. Weens, if you have an answer to, I think there's the two pieces, the residential and then how it looks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. There is a residential proposed adjacent to the existing residential. And it would be in a townhouse form and variety. It would likely be 2 stories in terms of building mass. But beyond that, I don't have any more details with respect to the exact number of residential units, other details around, visitor parking for those units and so forth. There was some preliminary concept plans that showed 10 residential units, being a 2-story townhouse built form that we've seen. But that piece of the development isn't what the developer is focusing their attention on at this point. They are generally not a residential developer, so they're looking to partner with a local builder in terms of building out that piece. And they would be working with a local developer to do that, and at that time we'd see more detailed plans around the residential concept. But what I can advise is that the plan that they did provide showed us that there is, space within the site to accommodate a townhouse development. Ultimately, in the end, will it be 10 units? Would it be something less? Once we work through those details, we'd get to that point. I can't advise you with any certainty this evening with respect to that. It would be subject to further planning approvals, whether those be site plan approvals and draft plan of condominiums, so those come back to council for approval as well. And there's a public process through that to get some more feedback from the residents with respect to the residential piece. With respect to the lighting and so forth, the application did submit a photometrics plan with the development that illustrates the lighting pattern over the site, and certainly there is a need to light the gas pump islands from a safety perspective. But there will be lighting. Lighting will be shielded so it doesn't spill over onto the adjacent property. And the photometrics have demonstrated that the light doesn't spill over onto the residential portion of the site. There is a little bit of spillover of light along the sidewalk edge, and that will provide, again, for some pedestrian safety in terms of having some spillover light there. With respect to the delivery of gas and all of that, yes, there's been advancements and progress made in terms of delivery of gas, and but one of the one of the ones that I know of was actually having the storage tanks for the gasoline above ground, and I've seen facilities of that where they do that, and again, those types of facilities come and go when they get underground. There are certainly improvements in terms of the design of those systems and whatnot. So there has been some changes and movement in the dispensing of gas, but it is still pretty much the same in terms of the pump and the activity at the pump. with respect to these renderings, these are new ones that came in just this evening. There was some changes to the, I guess, the landscape plan that showed where the commercial building that is flanking on Pelham Street. There had been patios and stuff in the earlier version of that. But those doors are actually the back of the retail space, so that space wouldn't really function as patio space. So there was discussion with the developer, if they can't function as a patio space, then it's fake, and it shouldn't be there. And so we asked them to enhance the landscaping with planting material, making it a better presentation. The patio space is internal, where if there would be a small cafe in there, they'd be able to have a patio space where they would be entering the door. There is a patio space beside the convenience store. Again, that would be some space where you would be able to put up some chairs and have a little bit of active space in terms of that. And you see that in the rendering before you. And the building material and the glazing is of fairly good quality. We're looking at brick with glazings and awning and use of stone materials and some stucco in terms of breaking up the mass and providing interest in the building elevation.
Thank you, Ms. Wiens. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand. Well, first of all, let me just say that we are being asked this evening to take the first step or the next step in the journey that we're on. And I suppose, like a lot of people, I'm hesitant about the next step if I don't know where the last step is going to take me. So to some extent, to the discussion of things like the residential component, it's pretty important. We start now, we want to know what's going to be there, because where we're going, I guess the destination is pretty important to us in this particular discussion. So I understand the comment with regard to the developer not being a residential developer, needing some other expertise, wanting to partner, perhaps even sell the property. I understand that. I understand that's not where his focus is today. But I would think that our focus, certainly mine, and perhaps those in the community that's surrounding it, might be on that piece, because that's the piece that people are going to be seeing when they look out their back windows or in their backyards. I think that if what had been proposed was going to be a residential development, people would understand. You'd have houses behind you, and that would be acceptable. So one very serious way of making this project acceptable to the residents of the area is that, in fact, they're backing up on residential. So is that going to happen? What's it going to look like? What's the configuration? What sort of people might be attracted to it? Those kinds of questions, I think, are those that are highest in the minds of people considering it, though they may be the last things that the developer himself may want to be thinking about right now. But I guess the question is if he's looking for us to make the next step, maybe that's what he ought to be thinking about. With regard to gas stations, I don't know what the technology is. I'm not an expert. If, in fact, these particular islands are being presented as the latest in the technology, I'd like to have that explained so that we can have some level of comfort that, in fact, it's not same old, but really, what are the features of this thing that make it really modern and something that we can welcome into the community. And as far as the nature of the buildings and the design of the buildings, I agree. I mean, the fact of the matter is that if what faces the road is fake, then let's not do it. But you know what? Why should it be fake? Why couldn't it be real? Why couldn't, in fact, businesses be accessed from the sidewalk, as we've often told ourselves is a better design for a small town like ours than the other. I think I see, again, I haven't had a chance to examine those boards particularly closely, but I think what's happened is that, though it might be in conflict with the designs that we've been given, that the building that was oriented north-south along Pelham has been moved to an east-west orientation butting onto Pelham. I think that's what it looks like. I don't really know, but if that's the case, that board is different than the design that we've been given. So, you know, all that leads to a great deal of ambivalence. And again, I'm at this point not convinced that I want to take the next step toward that conclusion. I want to see more to it. And that's my point, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and keep my comments brief. I feel that we find ourselves in a conundrum. We have an official plan which designates the property for a certain use, and we have an outdated bylaw, zoning bylaw, which doesn't align with it. So we are faced with the dilemma, and it's mandated on us, that we have to align our bylaw with our official plan that was recently adopted. When this first came forward, I had, like many of you, some serious concerns about having commercial abutting a neighborhood, and particularly the type of commercial. But what I have found, at least in viewing it from afar, is that what we have been dealing with is a developer who has made every effort, in my opinion, to try and accommodate and to listen to the public that abuts this property, and has attempted to create not only buffering, but buffering that blends in to the neighborhood that abuts the property. If he wanted to take a contrarian point of view, he could have taken the position, no, this is designated highway commercial, the entire site, and I want to optimize my utilization of the designation. We have not seen that with this developer. He has, in my view, listened to the neighbors, he's listened to staff, he's listened to council's concerns, and has come back with a modified development. And many might say, in some ways, it's devalued some of the site value. He has embraced our urban design guidelines, from what I can see, in the use of materials. He has embraced new urbanism in terms of fronting the properties on the sidewalk. If you look at the buffering that is being provided, Councillor Ribyak specifically, between his westerly limit and the residential component, there's substantial buffering being provided. He is providing the parking areas in the rear of the buildings. He's landscaped the site extremely well. So we requested a traffic study. It was done. We requested renderings of the commercial space so that we could have some concept of the site plan and what those renderings would be like. We have it, and we haven't even approved the zoning yet, but he went out and did that in an effort to try and at least reduce some of the concerns that we've expressed and that the neighbors have expressed. So I feel that because of the situation that we find ourselves in, and quite frankly, my concern about his commercial viability doesn't matter to me a bit. He's the guy that's putting up the cash. He's the guy that's taking the risk. He's done his market study, and I'm sure he's found that there's a demand for that type of service, and hopefully it'll be the type of service that we couldn't accommodate downtown anyway. Much like the East Vaughan Hill lands, we're expecting to see development out there and an accommodation of uses that we wouldn't be able to accommodate downtown anyway. So will it enhance the economic development in our community? I think it will. In the long term, it will. So I will be supporting it for all the reasons that I've listed, Mr. Mayor, and I trust that that the landscaped area between, or what will be the residential component, the developer will maintain at the highest level until such time as that residential development goes forward. And then at the same time, when he brings that development forward, he will again listen to the residents that are abutting the property and provide the type of residential development which will blend in enhance the area further. So I look forward to seeing that, but I will support this as it's being brought forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A reasonable compromise is saying that I'm going to put some residential there, but I find it very difficult to even think that I would want to buy a residential property that is abutting such a commercial enterprise. And looking at the service station in a busy place like that, what kind of a house is it going to be, and who is going to buy it, who's going to develop it? It's going to be a challenge residentially for that. We have a group of people who live in the vicinity, not as close as this, that have major concerns about this. So in fact, something that's going to be right abutting it rather than being in the vicinity of it, is that going to be a desirable? It's very easy for a commercial developer to say it's going to be developed residentially if we find a partner. Will he find a partner? He's not going to build residential himself, likely, because he's not that type of developer. I have a problem, like I say, planning-wise, this probably makes the greatest sense in the world. Practically, I don't see that it does, and I'm really going to have difficulty supporting it.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Others? Councillor Junkin? And then I'd like to ask some questions, but go ahead.
Just to put a not too fine a point on it to the Director of Planning, there is no way, if this was to go through, he says he's going to do the residential, but that could be 2 years, that could be 10 years. You have no way of forcing that to happen, right?
Ms. Weens?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, that's correct. You know, we talked about whether or not we can get the residential to happen first or at the same time as the commercial site, and there isn't a mechanism available to force that to happen or to enforce it. And so I can't tell you the timing on when that residential property portion would get developed.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. If I might have some questions for Ms. Weens, and just to follow up and build on what some colleagues have asked. So, Ms. Weens, we had a public meeting in April, and plans and things that are before us in July and recently, et cetera. So can you just give us, you talked about some of them already, can you just give us an overview of some of the things that have changed as a result of that public meeting and the plan that's being presented this evening?
Sure. There were actually 2 public meetings. There was one in December of 2013.
Right.
And then there was a design charrette that the developer undertook, I think in April of 2014. And then this past April, there was another public meeting. So the first plan initially contemplated commercial development over the entire site. It had the gas pumps up close to the corner of the property. It had a convenience store. It had a long commercial building that was backing onto the residential piece. And it had a kind of drive-through lube and oil change facility that was proposed in the initial proposal. So it has changed substantially since then. So the amount of retail commercial has been reduced. We still have the convenience store. We still have the gas pumps. The drive-through lube and oil change facility is gone, and the size of the retail commercial space has been reduced significantly from what was originally proposed. The pumps are now kind of central to the site, with the buildings pulled up closer to the street, and then there is the residential portion that is proposed to back onto the existing residential. So those are, you know, kind of high-level changes that have occurred. There were a number of kind of details on the site with respect to turning movements on the site based on staff's technical review of the site plan, turning lanes required off of Pelham Street, the addition of sidewalks and so forth. There was technical, you know, adjustments with respect to the garbage location and some changes to the landscape plan. But essentially, the plan has changed considerably from that initial presentation, where it was much more of what we would classify as a suburban-type commercial development to something that's a little bit more urban.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the residential component that we're being asked to change from urban highway commercial to urban living area built boundary, so that's sort of making it less, I would say, impactful on the land. What would that, if you're on one of those lots on Michaela and looking over the fence that they might have there and into that development, now there's going to be this area, I'm not sure how wide it is, for the residential area. What would that look like from somebody's backyard peeking over the
Yards
fence?
backing onto rear yards of, the new townhouse development.
I'm
So-
sorry, I meant in the interim until that townhouse development
Oh, in the
would progress.
interim, it would just be an open field area that would have to be kept neat and tidy and clean.
Okay, then there's a fence, is that correct? Okay, and the detail of the fence is shown here. I believe it's in one of the site plans, the fence. How hard would it be for someone to change it back from urban living area built boundary to the urban highway commercial?
Well, they would have to go through an official plan amendment, which is the same process that we've embarked to change it. It would require an official plan amendment, and that's a fairly, kind of onerous process. Public consultation, public meetings. If there was some change back to highway commercial again, we'd be at official plan, zoning, and site plan process.
Okay. But what's being recommended here and worked out through the process is that there is that buffer, is that correct?
There would be residential adjacent to the residential, correct.
Okay. There's a reference here to the planning partnership. They're the ones that have done our design guidelines, reviewing the, what it looks like in the
Yes.
site plan. Can you
Earlier
just comment
this-
on that, please?
Earlier this summer, they did review the site plan. And, again, from an urban design perspective, they took a look at the proposal, and they felt it was a fairly good proposal, fairly well executed. They had some comments that we passed on to the developer, and he adjusted the plans to address those comments. But overall, they were just minor little tweaks, not wholesale changes to the plan.
Okay, thank you. Questions about the storage tanks. I noticed that in the report, page 9 talks about prohibited uses to be located in this high aquifer area. It talks about one of the items word here, underground and above ground storage tanks that are not equipped with an approved secondary containment device. I don't know what that means, secondary containment device. Maybe you can shed some light on that. But how are these tanks managed overseas? Is that something that town staff oversee, or is there another body?
There is another body. Gas stations are highly regulated, and they have to meet what is the TSSA regulations and requirements. The fuel storage tanks are either double or triple walled in terms of containment of the fuel, so that they can prevent leakage. Fuel storage tanks have to be replaced every so many years now. They can't stay in the ground for forever like they used to. So it's a fairly regulated, and even the dispensing of the gas into the tank, they have to have full containment procedures and protocols around containing the gas if there is any spillage while those tanks are getting filled. So it's a fairly regulated process.
Okay, thank you. There was some concern in some of the feedback, both at the public meeting and in the letters we received about noise. This development would be covered, I presume, under our noise bylaw, is that correct?
This development would be covered under our noise bylaw, similar to any other type of commercial development in the town. Staff did consult with the Ministry of the Environment with regards to noise and whether this type of commercial activity would normally require a noise feasibility study. And again, we were advised by the Ministry of Environment, who are the specialists with respect to that, that no, in this case, type of noise that you would expect from this facility wouldn't be to such extent that it would be considered to be adverse and would need to be mitigated. And normally you don't do noise feasibility studies.
Okay. So our noise bylaw does regulate specifically car washes, but not gas stations, so there's no car wash here, so it wouldn't be.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So we see the site plan, and that's before us as well. I think, again, some feedback from the community said that, okay, what if you approve the site plan, they build it, and then it's changed or altered or not maintained? Can the town enforce the site plan?
Yes, the site
How's
plan
that work?
agreement is something that's enforceable. So bylaw enforcement can certainly enforce the agreement. It is registered on title, so it stays with the land, so that should the ownership change, that agreement stays with the land, and the new owner would assume the responsibilities and obligations of the site plan agreement. So it is completely enforceable. Certainly during the construction period, we would be doing inspections on the property. We would take letters of credit for security of certain works. And before we release the security at the end of the project, we'd go out and inspect and make sure things like the landscaping was put in and the sidewalks were in and, you know, top course asphalt was in and all of those things before we release the security back to the developer. So, you know, we ensure that, you know, when the project is completed, it is meeting the requirements of the site plan.
Okay, thank you. One of the changes, and it was alluded to, that we asked for was the traffic study, and as a result of that traffic study, the intersection works need to be done at the intersection. Can you
Yes.
just quickly go through that and who's paying for those works?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The traffic impact study was requested, and the applicant did do one, submitted one in March of 2015. It was reviewed by staff. We had some comments on it, so they provided an update in June, I believe, of 2015. One of the improvements is a turning lane, left turning lane off of Pelham Street into the site. So the developer is responsible for the widening of the pavement to accommodate that turning lane, the repainting and striping to put in that turning lane. The sidewalk construction would be the developer's responsibility as well, and there's a sidewalk on both South Pelham Street and Welland Road.
Quick, okay, thank you. There's some reference to, in the official plan under urban highway commercial, about a market impact study,
Yes.
saying that it's called for highway commercial developments greater than 1,800 square meters. I
Yes.
presume this development is far below that, is that
This
correct?
development is less than that. It's about 1,049 square 1,149 square meters. So it is below the 1,800 square meter threshold where a market impact study would have been required.
If we approve this evening, it then goes to council, and the site plan will come to us for consideration, is that correct? Can you just outline that process if approved?
Yeah, so if the staff recommendation is supported by council this evening, at the next council meeting, we would have a zoning bylaw amendment prepared based on, you know, the recommendations of the staff report, as well as the site plan agreement document that would be prepared, and we would be looking to council to pass the bylaws to adopt the official plan amendment, adopt the zoning bylaw amendment, and the site plan agreement. There are appeal periods to the all of those documents. The official plan and zoning bylaw amendment can be appealed by anyone. The site plan agreement can only be appealed by the developer if there are conditions in the site plan that the developer may not be satisfied with.
Okay, thank you. And just to that, that's appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board.
Bill to the Ontario Municipal Board, yes.
And what are the grounds for, if someone could appeal and,
Well, certainly, the Ontario Municipal Board will accept appeals from people that have made any kind of written or oral representation to council. They will accept those appeals. The grounds should be on planning grounds, in terms of, having some basis for appeal. And, the board would, eventually set a hearing date, and a hearing would commence, and, the hearing is considered, in legal terms, hearing de novo, so it's a new hearing, and the board would take into consideration all the evidence that they hear at that hearing in terms of rendering a decision at that time.
okay, thank you. So it would be made on planning grounds. So on planning grounds, you're recommending, you're not recommending absolutely everything. There are some changes that are being recommended here in terms of square footage, but
Yes.
you are recommending,
Essentially, it's staff recommendation that we feel that this proposal is supported by the upper tier policies in terms of the Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, the regional official plan, the town's official plan with respect to the urban highway commercial designation. So we feel that the zoning bylaw amendment to permit that commercial use is supported by those planning policies. With respect to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for the residential piece, again, we are comfortable with those changes and feel that they're appropriate and can be supported by the policy regime that we work under. We feel that the development is certainly appropriate and compatible. We've got commercial development on the opposite corner of this site. We've got an institutional use across the road on another corner. We feel that the scale of the development is such that it is not going to have an adverse impact on any of the residential components that are nearby. And so we're comfortable recommending this to council for approval.
okay, thank you very much. Just a couple, thank you for answering those questions. Just a couple of comments. Councillor Kersey, I thought, crystallized it very well. And then also from the comments that Ms. Weens stated, that much of what the community, aside from we don't want a gas station there, much of what the community has asked for, in my opinion, has been included here. The developer could put urban highway commercial all the way up to the back lot line. That's not what's being proposed. They are proposing a residential area which will serve as a buffer. It is a site that will be controlled by site plan control, so that will have to be maintained. It seems like the site, meets the urban design guidelines, is kind of the new urbanist way, not the old way of doing things. They may have come in that way when they initially came in with their proposal, and it may be here in some of the documents that they provided and folks provided in terms of marketing that they were trying to get out. But it does appear to be a better site. It includes sidewalks and walkways. Traffic impact is kept to a minimum. There is that buffer zone. Somebody, another body, the TSSA or C? TSSA will be governing the aquifer. The Conservation Authority has been reviewed. The Ministry of the Environment's been reviewed. So I see no reason not to approve this. I know that that will be upsetting perhaps for some of the residents who live in that area, but I do think that there will be a market. I hope there's a market for those residential areas. Time will tell. But I think having this buffer there is certainly a benefit, I hope, for those property owners on Michaela. certainly better than having a car wash and an oil change in their back windows. So, and I would, yeah, I don't know that we would have a leg to stand on if we didn't approve it at the Ontario Municipal Board, and I'm worried that, as the planner indicated, what was that Latin term? What is it?
Hearing de novo.
De novo. Hearing de novo means it's a new ballgame, is that correct?
The new hearing, yes.
New ballgame. So I'm worried that the developer would say, you know what, I've played nicey so far, and I'm gonna develop right to the extent, and here's my initial plan originally. And I believe that plan would meet many of the policies from the upper tier, et cetera. It would just be site plan for us. So for all those reasons, I will be voting in favor of the recommendation. Councillor Durley?
Just one point of clarification, perhaps. It was mentioned earlier that the urban highway commercial allows for fueling stations, but at page 9 of 141 of call to order, statement is made here, is noted that the town's official plan 2014 permits auto sales and service. It doesn't mention fueling. Now, just a technicality there, a clarification on that, because I know of sales and service auto centers that do not have refueling stations, and I'm just wondering, am I nitpicking here, or is it a fact that's not truly stated there? So in fact, would this be something that needs clarification, or is our official plan something more than that? Because I'm just looking at that statement, it gives me the message that perhaps there's a loophole there.
Ms. Weens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. No, I believe that the official plan does allow for it, and I'd have to defer to Julie Hanna, but I believe we consulted with the people that wrote the official plan as well to get clarity on that. But the intention is certainly to permit the sale of fuel.
Councillor Durley, can you highlight where that is in the?
The last paragraph on page 9 of 141 on the call to order download. The whole thing reads, with regard to the requested site-specific neighborhood commercial NC 108 zone, planning staff recommends the addition of a fuel retail outlet as a permitted use. And then it goes on to say, it is noted that the town's official plan 2014 permits auto sales, service and sales in the urban hydro commercial designation. And again, there may have been further designation or further searching into that, but certainly it's auto sales and service and refueling to me are two different things.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Weens, can you
Yes,
elaborate
I see
further?
where he's, Mr. Mayor, I see where he's pointed at, but it's my understanding, though, that the official plan does permit the auto fueling permission, the sale of gas.
Thank you. Can we get that, where is that on the previous page?
You want this?
No, I have it here. So here it is on the previous page. Permitted uses urban highway commercial include auto sales and auto service and sales, restaurants and drive-throughs, accessory use, accommodation facilities, supermarkets, wholesale establishments, institutional uses, space excessive retail uses such as automotive-related products, etc., home improvement materials, hardware. Can we get an answer for Councillor Durley?
Yes, I believe that in the term, the auto sales and service, that would include the sale of gas. I think that was the intent of the, that permission.
Ms. Hanna is signaling from the back. Yes, it does. Councillor, does that help?
No. Okay, I understand the planning perspective, but the legalese there has me a bit concerned, because I think that is something that can be argued. I don't know, but anyway, that's just me.
Thank you. Where does it say that in the official plan? It says auto sales and auto service and sales. Where's that definition found? Is it in the OP?
Ms. Hanna has a comment.
Ms. Hannah, if you don't mind, maybe we're going to turn the podium on. Would you mind? Would you please come up to the podium? Thank you.
We actually consulted with the writer of the official plan to seek clarity in the terminology, and he clarified that in his opinion as well, that the auto service and sales would include the sale of fuel because it's related to that specific industry. It also was pointed out to planning staff that within that specific designation, there are other areas in the community that have gasoline facilities that are designated that as well. So it is captured in the official plan, and there are site-specific examples already present in the community. So in light of what our consultants expressed to planning staff and also the local planning staff opinion, it was deemed that it was permitted use.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Would it be helpful to have that in writing, Counselor?
Well, we're not gonna get it tonight, so, you know, it's,
Okay.
it is, I believe that the consultation has taken place, and in fact, if that's what they think, then who am I to argue? Yes?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ready for calling of the question? Counselor Durley?
Recorded vote, please.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a
Counselor Rivak?
request for some clarification? I think you indicated that in the event that this vote fails, the proponent has the opportunity to approach the OMB with his initial plan. I think that's what you indicated.
He may.
He has the opportunity to.
Well, let's get staff to, you're looking for an answer on that, whether that is factual or not?
That's right. I think that's an important ingredient in this entire discussion, so yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I can't say what the developer will do. Our recommendation in terms of the staff report is based on the current plan that you have before you. If there is an appeal, would the developer, seek to introduce a different plan and go back to his initial plans? That would be something that he would do, but that's not what our staff report is based on. And he may do that. I, can't say whether or not he would, but our report is based on the current plan that you have before you this evening.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
It does, Mr. Mayor. I guess the concern that I have is that we have a developer who's gone a long way to responding to the concerns that are there. And he's hearing more concerns this evening, perhaps an indication that there are still some hurdles to climb to full acceptance. It would be my hope that in the event that this failed, that the developer would think about, so what do we need to do to meet the needs, as opposed to making that 180-degree turn and going the other way. So that's worth thinking about as we make the call.
Okay, thank you. The clerk has some point of clarity for us under the procedure bylaw. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, under Article 9(4)(f), there shall be no call for a recorded vote during a committee meeting. The council would certainly have that opportunity to have a recorded vote when this comes forward to council.
My apologies, thank you.
Thank you. News to me as well. I thought we could have recorded votes in committee.
Can't fool you know how.
All right, so I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is defeated. And the process now, Ms. Weens, is this goes to, maybe I'll ask the clerk, this goes to council for ratification, is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And that would go to our next meeting on the 19th of October.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. It will go as a recommendation to council.
Thank you.
Committee makes a recommendation, council makes a resolution.
Thank you. I hope that provides clarity.
So
So the matter will be going, Councillor Kersey?
So the recommendation is not to support staff's recommendation. Is that what the
Madam-
recommendation to council will be?
Madam Clerk?
The recommendation will be presented as it was worded with the note that it was defeated
At committee,
at committee, correct?
I see. But that doesn't necessarily have to weigh on what council decides at the council table.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just to that point, Councillor Durley raised an interesting question. I would, for one, like something in writing regarding auto service and sales prior to council's consideration of this. So if staff wouldn't mind, if it's okay
Sale of gas.
with council, yeah.
Be interesting.
Auto service and, thank you for catching that, service and sales does include the sale of gasoline. That would be helpful. So are we, I know there are many here ready, watching this. Thank you for being here. We're now going to turn to other business this evening. So this will be going to council. There's also an opportunity, should you choose, to make presentation to council. And that includes both the proponent and members of the public. Okay? No, it wouldn't? Sorry, Madam Clerk?
I'll just need to check the procedural bylaw on that, because there has been a planning meeting on it.
Oh, I see.
Just give me a moment.
It's a planning,
It's done. They can't comment.
Yeah.
they can't comment any
There
further?
has been a planning meeting on it, and that was their opportunity to
Okay,
present to council.
all right, my apologies, I apologize to you. Okay, thank you. Now we're gonna move on to other business. We're wrong twice here on the procedure bylaw, so thank you. We'll now move to the monthly Community Planning and Development Services report. Just need to switch gears here. It's been moved by Councillor King, the Committee of the Whole received the September 2015 Planning and Development Services report for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Ribbiak?
Just a couple of very minor questions. The building permit timeframes from September 1st to September 28th. Excellent performance in terms of getting the stuff done in time, but we have kind of average number of days. Do we exceed the limit in any of the cases that are indicated there?
Ms. Weens?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't believe that we are exceeding the limits.
Great.
For residential buildings, it's 10 days, and for large complex buildings, it's 30 days.
Thank you.
Thank you. Others?
Yeah. John's gonna.
Sorry, on that issue?
Yep.
No, I don't have any other that issue.
100%.
Anyone else on that issue, on the, just a question on the building permits. It says 18 commercial building permits? That's huge. Can we hear a little bit more about that, please, Ms. Weens?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did get 14 applications in for a greenhouse, commercial greenhouse. So that's 14 of that 18.
Wow.
Those are for greenhouse operation on Foss Road at Victoria.
Big money.
There was also a permit for renovation to a restaurant. There's also the permit for
That's fine, you don't have to go into the details.
the sewer for the commercial plaza in East Ponto.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions from staff on any of the items? Councillor Durley?
Yeah, just through you, greenhouses are commercial? I thought they were agricultural.
Ms. Weens?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they are classified as an agricultural building through the zoning, but because it's a commercial greenhouse operation in terms of the growing and the wholesaling of product under the building code, it's classified as a
Okay, thank
commercial
you.
building.
Thank you, that's my background.
Thank you. Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you. With regard to the item on, under projects, comprehensive zoning bylaw, planning staff have met with the consultants regarding information exchange. Preparation of base mapping has been initiated. So planning partnership, I guess, have been retained for the purpose of writing the comprehensive zoning bylaw. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. Have we done work over those couple of years? Has it gone to planning partnership, or are we just kicking the ball off now with planning partnership? I wonder if we can just explain that a little bit.
Ms. Weens?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was the contract for the zoning bylaw was awarded to Planning Partnerships about 2 years ago. And when I first came on here at the town, I met with them with respect to some of the projects that they were working on behalf of the town. And that was one that, as they described it, had been going on for a while, and it's been a very series of fits and starts, and mostly fits. And so there wasn't a lot of progress that had been made on that project over the last year and a half or so. And so it's important for us to get the new zoning bylaw in place. Again, under the Planning Act, we have 3 years to update our zoning bylaw once our official plan is approved. So we're getting moving on it, and they have initiated the mapping. And in the next 2 weeks, I'll also be meeting with them on at least doing some of the stuff around the environmental and the rural zoning, and then probably before the end of October on some of the zoning categories for the urban areas. They have kind of consolidated all the various zone categories that we have, and have taken a look at the number of variances and the types of variances, and so they have done some background with respect to are there any ways of kind of collapsing the number of zones, and are there regulations that we should change based on the amount of variance applications that we may have for specific variances. And then they did present a working document, I believe, and I don't know if it got as far as council, but they have done some work with respect to the contextual zoning, and provided some examples of that to staff to also think about. So I said it has been going on, but it's been rather slow progress up until now. So trying to get it going again.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we have an ETA on this thing?
I believe it says the
When
end
is
of the
it
year,
out?
is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, through you, we're hoping that we're going to have some kind of draft document early in the new year. We want to do some public consultation. There's also been, in the original proposal, there was mention of a kind of a technical working group that would be made up of some interested citizens, some developers, and so forth, to work with them in terms of, you know, presentation of some of the zoning concepts and so forth, to work through that that piece. So we want to certainly do that, and our goal is to have a zoning bylaw presented back to council hopefully sometime in 2016.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased that the planning partnership is on this thing and have decided to, or that we've decided to help them work on this thing constantly. But I guess I can't help but remark that I'm a little disappointed in the sense that I think we've been given to understand that this would have arrived by now. And the latest I'd heard was that probably before the end of this year, sometime in the fall, it would have arrived. So I'm glad it's going to get done, because I think this is something that will address a number of issues within the town. But I'm sorry it's not here yet.
Thank you. Others? No one else I can say other than thank you, so I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We look forward to that coming forward in a timely way. It's been moved by Councilor Ribbiak. The Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the multi-purpose community center business plan be received for information. Questions, comments? Councilor Durley.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to postpone the discussion regarding this matter until the next Committee of the Whole meeting, or at the call of your special meeting, We just got that information on Friday, and there's a lot of numbers in there that need to be digested. And also, just before this meeting now, we get a pro forma if in fact there was a nonprofit partnership that in fact enters my thought process to this. I think it would be much better discussed if we had an opportunity to digest what's there. And I leave it to you, Mr. Mayor, if you want to call a special meeting before the next call meeting, that's fine, or the next call meeting to have this through, because I think this is a very important discussion that needs to be done, and I think we have to understand it before we enter the discussion.
Thank you, Counselor. Do you want to refer it to P&P instead on the 19th instead of Cal?
At your call.
Oh, yeah, we're trying to keep that late. That's the election evening. We're trying to keep that a late agenda.
Yeah, so either
Okay.
at the next call or at the call of the mayor if you call a special meeting. And
Okay.
that's my suggestion.
Thank you, and I asked staff to put forward and just remind us, and maybe Ms. Pupo or Mr. CAO can comment just on this piece and how it relates to what's before us, and then we can look at that. Ms. Pupo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we were asked to provide the sheet that you received before council tonight, and that was simply to take the footprint that has been approved by council to date. The one that we're working with is the last one that was approved in January, I believe, or February, and do the same thing that we've done with the staffing one with that one. It doesn't really change the dynamics with respect to the square footage size and how we anticipated the Y would fall out, because essentially we'd be having some cost recoveries if the nonprofit organization was a partnership in the facility. But having said that, this is based on an assumption that they would have, the agreement would say full cost recovery. We have not sat down with the nonprofit organization to decide what that agreement looks like at this time. So this is the best information to date with respect to what that would look like if it was operated by a not-for-profit.
Thank you. So council's already received this, right? I was trying to think of the date that it was received.
The meeting in July 23rd, it was from the leisure plan at that time.
Okay.
So this has been updated with.
So July 22nd special meeting, is that what that was? Okay.
Just the point is, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
the
No, I
new
just-
information about the staff pro forma and using this information, to me, I need some time
Okay.
to just have a
That's
look
fine.
at these numbers and see how they fit in as far as my thought process goes.
Okay,
Get
thank
some
you very
background
much.
on
I'm
it.
sorry. So the motion on the floor is to postpone consideration of this until either a separate meeting or a committee of the whole, next committee of the whole meeting.
At the call of the mayor.
At the call of the mayor. Any further debate? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The postponement is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Papp. The Committee of the Whole received the September 2015 Corporate Services Monthly Report for information. Questions, comments to the Corporate Services Report? Ms. Pupo, can you tell us just about the RED, so the Rural Economic Development proposal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was just announced recently that the next phase of the RED, which is the Rural Economic Development grant application process, is now open. I'm hoping that something may come out of the Economic Development Committee meetings that we're having that could be something that we could apply for. I haven't gone through the dynamics of what that grant application is and when the closing date is. They usually give
Okay.
a long timeline, but looking forward to the next meeting to come up with something.
Great, thank you. And then the municipal grants, have those closed? I know there was a question from one of the groups, and somebody said that it was open still, is that?
That's correct. It's open till October 31st.
Oh, October 31st. Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey. Committee of the Whole received the September 2015 Fire Services Report for information. Questions, comments for the fire chief? Oh, he's not here. Oh, there he is. Can't see him behind the flowers. Moccasin, sorry, apologies. Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The chief was kind enough to put in a fairly extensive discussion of the suggestion that dispatch should be centralized, and I think he's made a pretty cogent argument indicating that that's probably not the wisest course to go. I think that's what I concluded from that. I just wonder whether the chief might comment on what the likelihood is of this measure going ahead. What's his view of what the future is going to look like?
Be brief, however.
Good enough.
Don't invite him.
Good enough.
There's gonna be some changes sometime, we know, in the near future, or in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. We don't know how that's gonna look, but, what the regional chair or the regional councillor is proposing, is very highly unlikely. There's no municipalities that are supporting any of this.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, so I gather from that there's a fairly broad consensus that the view that you hold is the one that ought to rule the day, among others, your peers within the region.
From the other chiefs, yes.
Yep, good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And just as a point of information, I think Regional Councillor Gale, who's also the chair of the Police Services Board, has indicated that he wants to present something to council at our meeting on October 19th. So we'll see if that still holds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the chief? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin that Committee of the Whole receive the September 2015 Human Resources Department report for information. Questions for the director? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Under total rewards projects, it looks like we're going to be going through and doing a full job evaluation, competitive salary, et cetera, not to read everything that's here. Many of those components were done relatively recently, were they not? Why are we engaging in redoing it? If you could go through that.
Ms. Gilbert?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. The last time we did do a full salary evaluation was back in 2010. So we do find ourselves in a position now where we should be reviewing our market competitiveness as well as reviewing our job descriptions to make sure that they are still in line, that we are paying that fair market value. So now is a good time to do it. It's a good time actually to evaluate our whole strategy and make sure that we are compensating in a way that meets the needs of the town as well as meets the needs of our employees. And then going forward, I'd love to be able to commit to doing an evaluation every 2 years. And if we can keep our tools up to date, then we won't find ourselves having a big expenditure to do it because we will be keeping up to date with our information.
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So is this something that we need to go out to a specific consultant, or is this something that we can undertake internally?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, because the information that we have, it dates back to 2010 and is rather dated, through conversations I've had with our treasurer and with our CAO and recognizing my skills in this area, I absolutely recommend that we do at this point engage a consultant to help us through the process, and then going forward, as long as it's maintained, I don't believe that we'll need to do it in years to come.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So your proposal then is to bring forward a recommendation to the budget?
Yes. Yes.
To
So I'd like
undertake
to,
this.
through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to put it out there now, see what consultants come to the table, see what skills and tools that they have available to us, and then after going through the process, being able to put something down as a budget request.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin, Committee of the Whole received the issue sheet regarding reduced speed limits on parts of Pelham Street, and that the entire stretch of the rural parts of Pelham Street from Merritt Road to the southern limits be recommended to be reduced to 50 kilometers per hour and posted as such. Questions, comments? There being none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Been moved by Councillor Durley, Committee of the Whole receive the September 2015 Public Works and Utilities Report for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Ribbiak.
I'd like to make a comment with regard to the communications device that the department has put together, and just to comment how much I appreciate that. Obviously, communications of a project like this to those who are affected most directly by it would increase understanding and create realistic expectations, reduce surprise and disappointment, dissatisfaction. It's a tool that I really wish we had and used during the Fenwick revitalization. I think it would have helped a lot of people come to grips with what was happening around them. So from my perspective, I think it's a great move, and thanks for doing it.
Thank you, Councillor. Others to that? Others to other items? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, given that the environmental compliance has not been done for Highland with respect to sewers and what have you, is it still anticipated that that project would be undertaken and completed this year, or is it being deferred till 2016?
Ms. Clementio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it'll be deferred, but we will still keep going ahead with the application. The finalization of the design, we'll have it ready for tender, and we'll be able to go early to tender in the early spring, late winter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Regarding the Pelham Street reconstruction at Hurricane, it appears that there's some delay here. New environmental compliance approval application. This was a very important topic that came up with budget last year, and I just wondered if Councillor Ribbiak's talking about communication. I wonder if we can somehow communicate with the residents and condo owners that asked for this. It was very important to them. You weren't here at that point, but
We've already drafted up a letter for we're trying to use the same template going forward now, and we've already started writing something up so we can communicate back to them where it's at, that it's not gone. It'll come back, it just gets deferred until we get all our ducks in a row.
yeah, I think they were hopeful we could do it in 2015. We were trying, and I think your report does note that some mitigations have occurred, but they do want it, they're hoping it's done sooner rather than later, so thank you. Councillor Ribbiak, you had another.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On another matter, I'm having difficulty locating on the screen here the comment with regard to the correction of deficiencies with regard to Fenwick revitalization. Just wanted clarification with regard to Church Street and the repaving thereof. Is that still going to happen this year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is. We've awarded the tender. It was lumped in with some other resurfacing work. It's meant to be happening within the next, I would say, 2 weeks. They've already been awarded the contract, and we're just waiting for it.
Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kersey.
One last question, Mr. Mayor. With respect to Port Robinson Road reconstruction, the issue with respect to the drainage and flooding that was seen in front of that one particular residence and the easement and all of that, where are we with respect to that and the other deficiencies that were present?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the drainage issue is meant to be, the construction to connect through the easement is meant to happen this Saturday. It was scheduled for last Saturday, but because of the weather, it got postponed. The other deficiencies, the mailboxes, I'm told are being addressed, but we don't have official word yet back, and that hasn't been inspected. And the CCTV results has gone back to the contractor who the consultant initially hired, and they've given comments back that they would like to get in and do another flushing because we identified there were some issues with the sanitary main. So that's meant to happen promptly. When I last spoke to the consultant, they were hoping it would happen in the next few weeks as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, anticipated time that the homeowners along there could connect to the sanitary?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, provided they give us those CCTV videos back showing that the issues with the sanitary main have been addressed. At that point, it could happen, we have the draft letter ready for them to go. It's really just a matter of us getting the CCTV results in and giving them the okay through our consultant and allowing the connection. We could notify them door to door with the letters and let them know.
So timeline, you're anticipating the end of
Same as getting
October?
those- I would guess it's going to depend on the consultant having that flushing contractor come in and finish that work. But I spoke to them last week. They said they would hope to do it this week or next.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, always one eager to celebrate successes. I have heard from several residents how pleased they are with the services that the director and your staff are giving, the time of response and the actual actions that are happening. So congratulations, and pass that on to your staff. It's something that I was really glad to hear, and I just had to pass that on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Nice
Thank
feedback
you.
to get.
Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you, Councillor Durley. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I think we're getting close to our curfew time, so I wonder if there's a councillor that might move that we extend curfew until the meeting, business listed on the agenda is completed.
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ribbiak. Thank you. Any discussion? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey. The Committee of the Whole received the September 2015 Recreation, Culture and Wellness Department report for information. Questions, comments? Look forward to various reports, Ms. Van Ravensway, regarding Summerfest and supper market, et cetera, coming up. And you've already updated us on a number of the other issues earlier, so thank you very much. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Moved by Councillor Papp, the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that they receive the information in the report. How might we ensure appropriate public notice is provided to citizens, and that the clerk be directed to contact the Pelham Business Association and the Welland Pelham Chamber of Commerce to determine if they wish to receive meeting notifications for Council, Committee of the Whole, Policy and Priority Committee, and Committee of Adjustment meetings. Questions, comments? Certainly appreciate the, this was something that I kind of initiated and asked based on some feedback from the public. So I certainly appreciate the clerk's report and work. And there's comment here about the possibility of a Gazette type of issue for the town for notices of meetings, but also the idea is that using first class mail. So very compelling statistics in terms of the numbers of meetings we've had over the last number of years. I'm looking for the number. It's huge, 200 and whatever it is meetings, and occasionally one or two people say they didn't get the notice, but invariably they do get it. So thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I know it was a bit of work to put that together, so thank you for doing that. Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree, it's a great report, and there are some tremendous ideas in it. I thought two might have been missing, though, in terms of the discussion. One is with respect to the technology around robocalling. We could literally let everybody know about every public meeting via telephone. I think the technology and the cost of that is probably not great. And the other, of course, is putting out emails to all known email addresses that might be registered. There are people who are interested in what public meetings we're holding and what they're about. We can, as a matter of course, simply put that information out, and if we were making any kind of an error, it's on the side of too much communication rather than too little, or narrowing the focus of our market too much. I didn't see anything with regard to those kinds of technologies. They exist, and they would be useful to my mind, in getting out information to the widest possible number of people about what's happening and what they can attend.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I did consider the thought of robocalls. However, during other presentations to senior management, it sometimes has been felt that if you overuse a process, it may be ignored when it's really needed, such as an emergency situation. So I did not include that as part of this report, but certainly can look into it further should committee so direct. In terms of direct emailing, we don't presently have a database source to provide us with the email addresses. However, it is something that we would hope to accomplish in the future. So certainly if that capability is available to us, we will use that mechanism. We also have to be careful of ensuring that folks can unsubscribe if they are no longer interested due to the new anti-spam legislation. So
Thank you. And through
thank
you
you for the suggestions.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, if we did go with robocalling, people have the opportunity to take their numbers off as well if they don't want it. But if the complaint is we don't hear from anybody, but when the public meetings are occurring, what they're about, there's at least some level of fairly simple and direct communication with the entire town, or nearly the entire town, if that was really an issue. And I appreciate that it was looked at. I just didn't see it in here, and I wanted to understand that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a word of caution. I know a lot of folks out there, my household included, don't really take kindly to robocalls. And I think it would be more of a nuisance than it would be the other. And as the clerk did state, if in fact we overuse that, the time we really need to use it, people could ignore it. So I think probably we should use extreme caution if we even consider doing something like that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durley. I hate the phrase robocalls. I think we only use them if somebody's water is leaking or something like that. So they are used sparingly. Thank you. Are we ready for calling of the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole received the September 2015 Clerk's Department report for information. The proposed council meeting schedule be recommended for approval at the next meeting of council. Questions, comments?
Good.
So the schedule wasn't to be appended here, was it? It's just coming. No, the schedule wasn't appended. Maybe if you could circulate that.
I will circulate that. I apologize.
Thank you. And we'll consider it at council. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Been moved by Councillor Ribbiak that the Committee of the Whole receive the September 2015 Chief Administrative Officer's report for information. Councillor Papp, sorry, didn't see you.
I'm not going to declare any more conflicts anymore. I'm done. But I just wanted to really honestly extend a sincere thank you to Carrie, Jordan, and Darren for helping us out with their strat plan with the Big Brothers Big Sisters. It's now been used at a national level, just so you know what kind of impact it's had.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we need to document that, and that's something that we've talked about.
Yeah, I'll actually send you something from our national office to tell you that they're using it across the country.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything further? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And I do note that in here is the number of staff that have been trained in the process, so thank you very much for that. It's been moved by Councillor King that this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, September 19, 2015, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you all. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks.
You're gonna leave council standing.
I'm not sure. What are we going to do with council?